The time has finally come to talk about The Strangers Chapter 2. Did it live up to the first movie for us? Did we like it as much as we liked Chapter 1? Because believe you me, we were the only people on YouTube talking about liking that movie. Or did they drop the ball? Stay tuned. Now, before we get into it, I do want to give a little bit of a backstory here. For our channel, The Strangers Chapter 1 was the first review we ever put out. It was our second video ever. We had done some sort of an introduction and then decided, perfect timing. Everybody on the internet hates this movie. Let's see it. Let's see what we think. And we both left the theater really cool on it. I understood a lot of the complaints about it being a remake, about it, like being titled a reboot, but then ultimately being a remake. To me, in the moment, a lot of the things that people were saying was just regurgitation. Felt a lot like how like serial killers have like rituals or kind of like traditional things that they do for every kill. Like, to me, the movie felt very different than the original 2008 movie. And so when I was hearing that it was like a shot-for-shot remake, when I sat down and watched it, and it kind of like really it is, but it isn't. I think that I had gone in with such low expectations at that point that I was really happy with what we ultimately ended up getting. That's not to say that I thought that Chapter 1 was a great movie by any means, but I certainly liked it a lot more than Strangers Prey at Night, which I thought was, initially when I first saw that movie, I kind of actually really disliked it. I've since kind of come around to finding some fun in like the nostalgia and stuff like that, and that like whole like 80s retro vibe that they tried to pull off in that movie, I've come around on. There's still some gripes with that movie itself. Like, I don't like CGI blood, and they use a ton of it. But that first movie, that 2008 movie, is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I still get like the creeps when I watch it. So coming into Chapter 2, I really wanted to like this movie. At the time, it felt like when Chapter 1 came out, me and Tyler were the only people we knew championing the movie. So sitting down for this one, I was really eager and really hopeful that I was going to walk away having loved this movie as much as I liked Chapter 1. And so, does Chapter 2 live up? Is it as good? Did I enjoy it as much? Did I have as much fun with the characters? And I intend to answer all of those questions right after this warning. I'm gonna spoil the fuck out of this movie. If you don't want this movie ruined for you, now is the time to click away and come back after you've watched it. Because not only do I have spoilers for this movie, but because of something in these special features for Chapter 2, I think I potentially know a spoiler for Chapter 3 that I'm going to put well at the end of this. It's just kind of to highlight how I feel things are being handled by the people that are in control right now of the IP. Jumping right into the positives, the first thing that I want to talk about when I talk about Strangers Chapter 2 is Madeline Pesh. My wife and I have been chipping away at the show Riverdale, which is becoming an arduous watch the later you get. But she is kind of our favorite part of the show. And so when I saw that she was going to be leading the new Strangers trilogy, I was really excited. And rightfully so. In Riverdale, she doesn't do a whole hell of a lot to show us what she is really willing to and capable of putting on display in these two movies. Say what you want about the story, about, like certain elements. I don't think anybody can disagree that she is doing the absolute most to make all of this work. Which makes a whole hell of a lot of sense when you learn that she's a producer in the movie. Given that she has skin in the game, I'm not really surprised that in this movie, comparatively to Chapter 1, not only does the script call for a lot more emotion from her, but she's displaying a hell of a lot more talent than I've seen in anything that she's done thus far. And for my money, her talents are best utilized in my second positive, which is the opening 20 to 30 minutes of this movie kick so much ass compared to like anything from Chapter 1 and most of the rest of Chapter 2. We see Maya wake up in the hospital and kind of have to learn what's happened and how she's faring in the aftermath of Chapter 1. And simultaneously, we are finding out, like, through talk in the town and in the diner, that the strangers are finding out that they hadn't actually killed her. So pretty quickly we get to Maya waking up in the middle of the night in the hospital and just feeling like something's off, like realizing like something's about to go down. And then she receives a phone call where it's like a block number, and then the person on the other line asks if Tamara is home. And the ending of that phone call then begins what is probably like the highlight of the movie, which is this big drawn out chase scene where the Scarecrow, I believe they call him in this, it's the Man in the Mask. The Scarecrow is chasing Maya throughout the hospital, and at different points she's, kind of stuck in these like, how are you going to get out of it circumstances. And of course, in this movie, they are really relying on us to accept that overnight she has become a survivalist, which for me really works in this opening, but we'll talk more about it when we get to the next section. And my third positive definitely plays into that opening, but is something that I do feel is prevalent throughout the rest of the movie, and that is that even in scenes that I struggle to, I guess, find like redeeming qualities in this movie, there's an intensity that like the filmmaker is intentionally setting in place, and it is very effective. Sitting down to watch the movie last night, like the second she gets the phone call, I got that like ugh feeling, like that somebody's behind you, or like you're home alone, you're watching something creepy. And I love that feeling. I don't get it that often. So whenever a movie can actually effectively make me feel it, I give it its flowers, and this movie absolutely does it at times. And now jumping into our negatives. My first negative is something that plays out through the bulk of the movie, and it is the way that we are fed the stranger's kind of backstory. To begin with, for some reason, I just aesthetically don't like the choices that they made with the flashback scenes, but on top of that, I don't think that we should have seen it play out that way. I think a better way to have handled that would have been to have like Maya uncover something about Baby Doll and then move forward from there, and then get to her learning that it's the server from the diner. Instead, the like couple opening shots of the movie, we find out very quickly that that's who is one of the strangers, is the girl who drove them to the Airbnb in the first movie. And it very much so, to me, feels like it takes you out of the movie, because like the movie's intentionally showing it to you versus things happening in the movie that make that part of the story start to come forward. That, and there's this kind of level of like she becomes the lead of the three strangers when you tell the story the way that they chose to. And I mean, most of the movie, the way things feel at the very least, is that the Man in the Mask, or the Scarecrow, is kind of their leader. In the real-time events of the movie, that rings true, but then when you get to those flashback scenes, it more so is from her perspective, and it kind of seems like she's the catalyst setting everything into place. Like, I mean, even down to the first kill for them, she's the one who did it, and that's how we end up finding out who Tamara is, which was a choice. And now I'm sure you're going to notice before I get to the end of my negatives that will be the theme here, is the writing of this movie is kind of head scratching at points, especially moving into my second negative, which is just the characters of this movie. The regular people that are just walking around in Venus, Oregon. Whoever wrote this, I don't know if you're ever going to see this video. I doubt it, but I hope you do. And I hope that you take something from this, and I apologize for what happens next. People don't behave like this. It's some of the strangest like writing that I've ever seen, I think. Like, why? All right. If I am a nurse, right, and I'm out for a drive with my friend, and I see one of my patients running along the side of the road, it's pouring, they're covered in blood, and they have wounds that I didn't treat earlier in the day. The second they get in my car, I'm just driving, first off. I'm not going to sit there and linger and ask them questions and highlight all the strange stuff that this woman seemingly felt was appropriate to address in that moment. I'm certainly not going to allow my passenger to pull out a combat knife to peel an apple right in front of a paranoid survivor of the craziest home invasion that she's probably ever heard about. Not for nothing, if I'm that nurse, I don't care what the weather conditions are. If I'm driving with that person in my backseat who is clearly terrified, as she has already tried to break out of the car at this point, the last thing I'm going to do is pull over for two strange men that this woman is clearly even more terrified of. I'm not going to do that to her. That's just bad writing, bad decision making. She's a nurse. She's supposed to have empathy. Everything in the character as she is just baseline written would imply that nothing that transpired in that car would happen. Like this fucking Gregory character, what are you doing, dude? Why, like, you know what this girl has been through. Are you trying to end up on like an FBI's most wanted fucking list? Like, it is crazy to me that this guy knows everything that that character's been through. Like, it's literally the talk of the town what this girl has survived, and this dude gets in the car and is just, what the fuck are you looking at? People don't behave like that. And then for my third negative, there's this plot device that like a lot of horror movies use that like has always driven me nuts, but like they do it kind of a lot in this. It's like it's almost crazy like that like multiple times throughout this movie a stranger will kill a person completely detached from the situation when they have an opportunity to just kill her instead. And like I get that then the movie ceases to exist if they do that, but like usually that's like the one dumb thing that they're doing throughout the runtime just because they understand like I have to pad this out. The ask with this movie is to suspend all disbelief at all points and just accept the information we're giving because we're giving it. And for my fourth negative, I feel like context here matters because I'm reading my notes and God am I a goober. I just wrote, that a fucking bore? And that's because by that point in the movie, I'm just kind of accepting, like already, how fucking stupid this is probably gonna be. And so we have these three killers that like they get off on this shit. Everything with them in the first, like the original movie is like melee weapons and like all this other stuff. And like it's very personal, it's very intimate, and then we have this weird detached scene where the scarecrow goes and like uncages this animal that we don't see, and then we get this borderline like Evil Dead kind of like tracking shot, which is I guess like a nice little nod if it was even intentional. I probably doubt that it is, and I think it's meant to like kind of highlight where Maya is as a character, because like the implication here is like she is now like a survivalist, and like I can get behind that. I love a Sarah Connor turn. I love like like Laurie Strode and like the Blumhouse trilogy. I like that version more than the H2O version. We'll put it like that. The problem here is that it's a CGI fucking nightmare, and nothing about it is convincing. It then just kind of like undoes things that we know about the strangers, because again like this is all supposed to be like a ritualistic kind of thing for them. Now it just seems desperate. They're using crossbows from hundreds of feet away. They're sending out wild animals and stuff. It's not them. It's poor characterization. And my last negative for this one is pretty obvious one. Like, I'm sorry, if the night before the events of this movie you got stabbed in the gut and left for dead, you're not doing any of the shit that she's doing in this movie. And that's something that like movies are like kind of increasingly doing, which is like always a bad idea. And in fact the Blumhouse trilogy of Halloween movies kind of fucked themselves by doing it. So why another studio would see something like that and then be like, hey, you know what we should do? First movie of a trilogy, let's stab our lead right in the abdomen. At least with Halloween Kills, Laurie was hospitalized throughout the bulk of it. Yeah, there was a couple times she got up and tried some shit, but then she got hurt again. This girl, she's just fucking Eye of the Tigering. And I'm sorry, but everything that we learned about her in the first movie, nothing about her in that first movie implies that like she's gonna be this fucking like this character. And kicking off our questionable section of the video, or the more mixed topics, I have Maya the Survivalist, and that is largely because while I enjoyed that element of this character in this movie, they still found a way to like mishandle it if you kind of pay attention to some of like the little intricacies of what she's doing throughout the movie. Like we have this scene where she's like this badass who's like stitching herself up in the woods, right? And like that these people are after you, so by all means leave every ounce of evidence behind that you've just done that. Make it as easy as possible to track you because they're tracking you and you want to help, I guess. Or like getting access to your cell phone at Danica's house and just, I don't know, like I get that she knows like an ambulance is on its way, but like why is the FBI not being called? Like, why is that not happening? Why is no other authority like being called, especially after a guy from like the Oregon Internal Affairs or whatever was literally just fucking capped in front of you. And like, not for nothing, but he literally looked her in the face and was like, yeah, no, I'm just not really happy with the way that like the Venus police force is handling these crimes, so I'm here to help you. Did he not call anybody else and tell them what he was doing? I don't understand. And for my second mixed, I have cinematography. I actually really enjoy a lot of the way that like these two movies have looked. There's like a richness to like the color grading and stuff that I've really enjoyed. But I was watching some of like the behind the scenes stuff, and something then became obvious to me. And so like when you're watching the movie, technically this is very nitpicky, but like a lot of these like scenes that are like almost shot like for like dusk or like dawn, they're shot like in the middle of the day. And so like there are these scenes throughout the movie that have this like almost like the sun's coming up or going down look to them, like this almost like blue tint over them, that don't feel like natural in any world that I've lived in. But then like the nighttime scenes and stuff are like color graded correctly to just kind of look like a cinematic world. And so I don't know if they made that decision because like the movie takes place in like the Pacific Northwest, and so they're trying to go for that like kind of like overcasty look. But like for instance, the scene where Maya is stitching herself up, I spent the entire scene trying to piece together whether or not it was day or night because it's just blue. Um, and it turns out it was shot in the middle of the day, and it's meant to be shot for like dawn. It doesn't read that way. It just doesn't come off as natural in any way. And my final mixed is that the strangers play with their food way too much in this movie. This is a chase, like the opening of this movie is a chase scene because like they're desperate at this point. They accidentally let somebody survive. They're it's almost implied immediately that that's not the game that they're playing just by like the rules of engagement. Like if they are to the point where they're attacking people in a hospital, like they're killing janitors, nurses, doctors, all sorts of shit, then the rules of their game have changed now. They're not going to like for instance, Maya's running out of the hospital and the man in the mask or the scarecrow ends up coming up like behind her. And now this is a woman who's got a massive stab wound to her abdomen. Can't really move all that well, and we just watched this dude run down this corridor in the hospital with an axe in his hands, with like the velocity of a gazelle. And so you're not gonna chase her? You could have ended the movie 10 minutes into it. And again, I get that like you don't want to do that. You don't want to like, but again, it's just that you just don't have him walk out of the hospital, and then you don't have people notice stuff like that. Or again, those scenes where we watch as like somebody's about to help her, and then the strangers choose to kill the person who's just helping. Like if your goal is to kill them as well, you're gonna get there. You know, they have not proven to you what Maya has, and that it's that she's wily and will get away from you. So that was how I felt about The Strangers Chapter 2. Like I said, I went into this movie really wanting to like it because it felt like Tyler and I were the only two people on YouTube championing it, and we were the ones with the smallest voice. We still are. But it doesn't feel like the people that made this movie saw feedback and like tried to course correct, and they did reshoots on this movie. I mean, there are things that we know about this movie, like that there were supposed to be like two new masks introduced in this, like a whole new set of characters that were killers that we've not even seen, and then they were nowhere to be found. Again, we know that there were reshoots, and so like it feels clunky, it feels messy, and it doesn't feel like it was written by somebody who understands basic human emotion or behavior. The movie starts so strong, and by like the 30 minute mark, it's already lost its way, and it's a little confused. And now largely a lot of this sentiment is going to come because I've now watched the bonus features, but I kind of have a feeling that that's largely because it feels like the director and Rennie Harlan is like kind of detached from the movie. It feels like they're focusing more on like what the producers think and feel about the way that like the first movie was perceived and stuff. And so I'm wondering if there was something that happened with the studio that like they're kind of the directors now and he's just kind of there. because even down to just like those like like confessional style things where it's like almost like an interview. Like they show Madeline Pesh and Courtney something or another, Solomon maybe, um, like nonstop, and then it's like the end of the featurette, and Rennie Harlan's like, "Hey, yeah, no, I directed this movie. Like, what's up? Did you?" And so it is with kind of like a headache. I have to say, I'm giving this one a 2 out of 5 because again, like we championed that first movie so greatly that like when The Strangers Chapter 3 comes out, like I fully intend to check that one out as well and just kind of wrap all of this up, and hopefully that one makes some of the decision making here make sense, because I feel like when you're dealing with like the middle chapter of a trilogy, you can either go the Empire Strikes Back route or the Halloween Kills route, and it's really up to the ending to recover what you've lost if you go the Halloween Kills route, which obviously with the Blumhouse trilogy. But we're not talking about those movies, silly. We're talking about The Strangers, and to me, like the fact that like there isn't a motive means that like if you're making a bad Strangers movie, it's because you're overworking it. You're overthinking the simplicity of this concept and you're doing way too much. This realistically should have been a trilogy that was shot to be real time through the course of one night. Now, by the end of chapter 2, I think we're like 5 days out from where all of this started, and it just feels so improbable that like a larger police presence isn't there. It doesn't make any fucking sense that like there are people in this town that are like, yeah, well, this shit just happens, and nobody like that isn't actively in on it is doing anything about it. And so it just kind of feels like this like very like sloppy, lazy mess, because the way that things work in the real world apparently aren't the way that things work in the world that they're setting up in this trilogy. I should add, there is a stinger at the end of, or not at the end of the credits, but like midway through the credits, where it's kind of like a look at chapter 3, and again, it kind of, I mean, like it lends itself to the remake stuff, because a lot of what you're seeing in that looks very familiar to what chapter 1, chapter 2, and 2008 have already done. So how you've stretched this over the course of 3 movies is beyond me, but I'm really hoping that the third has a story to tell, because the second certainly didn't. And that's a bummer. And before I dive into that Strangers Chapter 3 spoiler that I promised at the top of the video, I just wanted to take a moment to just, again, thank everybody for the continued support that we have been getting. Our last few videos have gotten a lot of love, and we just really appreciate it. And I promise I won't take every video to have a soapbox moment like this or anything, but at the end of the day, we really are just those guys, and we appreciate every comment, every like, every view, every little thing helps the channel grow, and we just appreciate all of you guys. So thank you very much. And if you're new and you've gotten anything out of this video, if you've had any fun, even the slightest bit of a chuckle, subscribe, because we're just getting started and we're having the time of our lives getting to engage with everybody. So again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much. So again, this is a spoiler warning within a spoiler video for a different movie, but it is deeply related to this one. So if you don't want anything ruined for The Strangers Chapter 3 and you want, some element of surprise going in, don't watch this. I'm assuming that anybody who doesn't want it ruined is gone. So again, while preparing for this review, I waited for the home release. I watch everything behind the scenes before I do these reviews, because sometimes learning the context of certain things or like the intention can kind of change the way that something feels in a movie to me. And largely nothing changed for me. I do understand some of the intention behind some of like the like character decisions that are made and stuff, but it doesn't justify them, and certainly doesn't make them work. With that said, though, there is just such a crazy decision that somebody in editing decided to make that nobody corrected, I think, which is, in this movie, we are introduced to the character Gregory. Gregory is played by Gabriel Besso. And again, like, it's not the actor's fault that the character is written the way that the character is written, and I can feel a certain chemistry between him and Madeline Petch that I think really, really does work. It's just a lot of like the camera work and like again just writing for his character, but he's doing fine. With that said, he is credited in the bonus features, like in like a kind of interview thing, as Gregory and Scarecrow. So I think that that's kind of the confirmation that we all needed, that like that character, like the Man in the Mask, is being portrayed by more than one person, but not necessarily like, I don't mean an actor. I mean in world, like there are multiple people wearing that exact outfit to, you know, kind of create that like seamless effect of like you were on this part of town, now you're here. Um, Either that or that's just the dumbest decision making, because right after he's supposed to have been chasing her, he is then caught out in the rain with their other roommate, so that wouldn't make any sense. But yeah, just something that I noticed that I thought was a very, very strange decision. Like, and I've done more research and I've tried to like look into it, and no, there's nothing online that implies like that in chapter two there is any like spoon-fed thing that tells us that's who he's supposed to be. So they ruin their own movie, I think. Either that or like they are just highlighting the fact that like I believe he does wear the costume at points in the movie, like through her like kind of like, you know, paranoia and psychoses, but like I don't think that that's what they meant. And just by the way that things are being handled by the studio with this trilogy, I'm kind of inclined to believe that maybe they just really, 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 really haphazardly put together some bonus features for this movie and didn't realize that they just ruined a surprise from their next movie, which is crazy if that's what happened.